God, we thank you that you are daily bread to us, that your word feeds and nourishes our souls. We ask that you would grant to each one of us the nourishment that we need this day in our spirits through Jesus Christ. And we thank you for it. Amen. If you are thirsty, there are signs of that thirst. A parched mouth, listlessness, or even a fuzzy head can indicate that you need to drink some water. Human beings cannot survive without water. In fact, all living creatures and all plant life and wildlife need and require water to live. Water is essential to life. We're all familiar with the picture of the man in tattered clothes crawling across the desert, calling out, "Water, water." His one longing is for a glimpse of a life-giving oasis of water. And that's, of course, a severe case of thirst. Just as there is physical thirst, which is really a natural protection for us, because it indicates that we need water, there also is a spiritual thirst. There are signs that we are spiritually thirsty. Perhaps a general dissatisfaction, or a sense of weariness, a sense of longing for something more than just what the world offers. Spiritual thirst can manifest in many ways. It can manifest as a feeling of emptiness and just a longing to be filled, but nothing seems to satisfy that thirst in the world. Now, sometimes people do not recognize or realize that they are thirsty. Even in the natural realm, you can be mildly dehydrated and not know it. If you're a person that maybe drinks nothing but coffee, tea, and caffeinated pop, they say that you might be dehydrated and not realize it. That actually sometimes people aren't even realizing it. And then if they start to consciously drink water, then they begin to develop an actual thirst for water and realize that they are thirsty and how thirsty they really are. So it's really important for us to make sure we do get that water that we need. So it's almost like it activates your thirst to have some water, to have that drink of water. It makes you realize that you need it. Well, this can also happen spiritually. Sometimes we can be thirsty for God and yet not really know it, not really realize it. But God's Word and God's presence can come to us and we can begin to drink. And then we begin to realize, wow, I'm really thirsty. I'm really longing for God. Well, it's a blessed thing to be thirsty. It's a good thing to know that you're thirsty, that you need more, that you need God. David gave us the most beautiful image for thirst in Psalm 42. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul longs and pants for you, O God. What a beautiful picture. Deer have an amazing reflex. In fact, they can smell water. They are drawn to water just as any other animals are. They are drawn to water. They can actually smell it. And they are drawn to it because it's essential for their well-being, for their life, for their health, for their survival. And deer will pant and search and seek for water. And when they find that quiet pool or that flowing stream, they drink deeply and satisfy that thirst. Recently, a friend of mine posted a really interesting video on Facebook, and it's of a deer in the midst of the woods, and there's this small pool of water there, and the deer is in the middle of that water just leaping and jumping and splashing and just having a grand old time. Now, I assume that probably that deer drank. I don't know if it was celebrating the last I found water or if it's just one of those spring joys of having beautiful water to play and cavort in. But I thought, what a beautiful image of how living creatures literally depend on water, and they will go many, many miles in order to find it. Well, how far will we go to find the living water for our souls? It is a good thing to know that you're thirsty for God, for it draws you to the living water that God offers. Now, it's very important that we don't mistake that spiritual thirst for something else, because sometimes we'll try to satisfy that thirst with other things, and those other things are never going to satisfy. Maybe material things. Well, that's just not going to satisfy a spiritual thirst. Or it might be status or recognition. We might thirst for relationships or other types of things, substances, alcohol, drugs, those kinds of things. But nothing that's in the material, natural world can satisfy our spiritual thirst. Only God can. We are spirit beings. We have a physical body, we have a soul, our emotions, our mind, and all of those things need to be nourished. But we also have a spirit, and our spirit needs God, a relationship with God. So what we hope is that we will recognize that thirst that we may have, and that that thirst will lead us to God. As David says, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with God? What a wonderful cry of the heart. Well, Jesus had a remarkable encounter one day. He had an encounter with somebody that perhaps did not even know how thirsty she was for God. Jesus was traveling through Samaria, and his disciples had gone into a town to find some food. And Jesus sat down at a well outside that town, Jacob's well. It was midday, it was hot. Jesus was tired and thirsty from his journey. You can imagine what it's like going on foot for many, many miles in that climate in Galilee, in Israel. Well, a solitary Samaritan woman approached the well, carrying her water jug. She had come to draw water from that well at an unusual time of day, just at the heat of the day. She probably hurried to that well, and when she noticed that there was a man there, and she could see that he was a Jewish man, perhaps by his prayer shawl he may have been wearing or whatever, she would have her head down, knowing it's unacceptable for a woman to address a man. But to her amazement, the man spoke to her. "Will you give me to drink?" She replied in amazement, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" We wonder, what does this mean? Well, normally Jewish men would shun this woman because, first of all, she was a woman, and secondly, because she was a Samaritan. The Jews did not associate with the Samaritans. There was a great prejudice there. And a man believed that he should not lower himself to talk to a woman one-on-one. And yet, here this man addresses her. "Will you give me to drink?" Jesus saw something in this woman. I believe that he saw a thirst in her. And he made an opening for her to engage in a conversation with him. His response to her was even more amazing, because his response was immediately a spiritual one. Instead of, "Yes, I'd like a drink," he says, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." That's an amazing statement, because it opens up a spiritual discussion with this woman. Now, at first, the woman mistook him and thought he was referring to